Imagine waking up one day with a distinct feeling that someone has been living your life for you. Not a stranger, not an enemy, but a silent presence inside your own skull making choices before you even know a choice is available.
Imagine
realizing that the voice you call yours might actually be an echo, a residue, a script written long before you learned to shape language. Imagine discovering that the deepest parts of your identity may not be yours at all. There is a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes violent, when you notice that your reactions arrive before thought, your fears appear without invitation, and your desires feel strangely predetermined. You reach for your phone without choosing. You feel anger before understanding. You sabotage opportunities you claim to want. You replay arguments that never actually happened. And in those brief seconds between impulse and awareness, you sense it, the presence of something older, quieter, and infinitely more patient than your conscious mind. The subconscious is not just a shadow beneath your awareness. It is an architect, a guardian, a saboteur, a storyteller, and sometimes a tyrant. But here is the paradox that unsettles even the most self-assured. You cannot see it, yet it sees everything. You cannot command it, yet it obeys a logic you cannot escape. You cannot fully understand it, yet it understands you with disturbing precision. What if every decision you've ever made, even the ones you believed were grounded in rationality, was shaped by a network of silent forces sculpted in childhood? Forces formed by a glance, a tone of voice, a forgotten humiliation, a fleeting moment of praise. What if the life you're living now is nothing more than the aftershock of emotional earthquakes you never realized occurred? Consider how often you find yourself longing for things you don't truly value. How often do you feel drawn to patterns you swore you'd outgrown? How often do you chase comfort while claiming to desire growth? How often do you walk toward the very fire you fear? And in the quietest hours, when the world dims and your distractions fall away, you feel a strange tension in your chest, a suspicion that you are being guided by something below the surface, something ancient, something unspoken. You might call it instinct, you might call it trauma, you might call it destiny, intuition, imprinting. But beneath all those labels lies a deeper truth. You are not a single self. You are a constellation of selves, some conscious, most concealed, negotiating control of a life that you mistakenly believe is unified. And so the great question emerges, not gently but like a whisper pressed directly against your spine. If your subconscious is directing your life, then who are you really? A witness? A passenger? A prisoner? Or something else entirely? You've felt it at moments you can't quite explain. Those déjà vu pulses that pull you into memories without memory. Those sudden surges of emotion that seem disproportionate to the situation. Those moments when your body reacts before your mind assembles meaning. Why does your heart race at the thought of confrontation? Why do you shrink from praise but chase validation? Why does silence make you uneasy? Why do you feel compelled to repeat patterns you hate? You tell yourself these are quirks, habits, personality traits. But what if they are the fingerprints of an unseen intelligence, shaped over years, quietly governing everything from your relationships to your ambitions to your sense of worth? This is the hidden architecture of your subconscious, the silent puppeteer, the unseen narrator, the quiet empire beneath your thoughts. You think you know what you want, yet something inside you wants differently. You think you understand your fears, yet something deeper trembles for reasons you have never articulated. You think you control your impulses, yet something older moves your hand before your intention catches up. And in that tension between who you think you are and who you actually are lies a truth you've avoided. Not because you're weak, but because confronting it requires a kind of internal rebellion most people never dare attempt. So the question becomes, what would happen if you finally turned inward, not to polish the self you present, but to meet the self that hides? There is a doorway in your mind that you've never walked through. A threshold that separates the conscious narrator of your life from the subterranean architect shaping its structure. To cross it is to confront everything you've buried, inherited, ignored, or misinterpreted. But to ignore it is to live half a life directed by forces you never chose. And here you stand. Right at the edge of that threshold, are you ready to see what lives beneath the surface? You stand at the threshold of your own inner world. But before you step further, you must confront something far more unsettling. The problem is not simply that the subconscious influences you. The problem is that you've been taught to believe you are fully conscious, fully rational, fully in control. That illusion is the true prison. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Yet most people never question the life they call fate. They accept their recurring patterns, their emotional triggers, their fears, and obsessions as part of who they are. They defend their discomfort as if it were identity. They cling to their wounds because healing them would require rewriting the story they've been reciting for decades. But the real issue goes deeper than personal resistance. It begins with a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human mind works. You have been told that your conscious awareness, the narrator in your head, is the captain of your life. But neuroscience tells a different story. The conscious mind is not a commander, it is a commentator. It observes choices already made, impulses already triggered, emotional storms already formed in the deep chambers beneath awareness. Imagine watching the surface of an ocean. You see ripples, waves, currents, but everything beneath 10 feet becomes invisible. The subconscious is the entire ocean below those 10 feet. Dark, vast, ancient, filled with forgotten shipwrecks, strange creatures, buried memories, and currents that move continents of emotion. Yet you've been navigating your life by looking only at the surface. This misunderstanding is not your fault. It is inherited. Society celebrates the conscious mind, the part that sets goals, crafts narratives, performs duties, and builds careers. But it hides the reality that your subconscious was shaped long before you ever set your first goal. It was shaped by the tone of your parents' voices, the tension in your childhood home, the unspoken rules you absorbed, the wounds you never named, and the expectations you carried without being aware of them. Nietzsche believed that a person's internal world is a battlefield of competing wills, some ancient, some newly formed. What you call personality is often just the dominant will at any given time. Your subconscious is where these wills wrestle, devour, merge, and reappear in new forms. This is why you sometimes feel like a stranger to yourself. Why can you act with confidence one day and collapse under doubt the next? Why you can crave stability and self-destruction simultaneously. The hidden problem is this. The subconscious is not one voice. It is many, and most of them were not chosen by you. Consider the quiet messages drilled into you through culture. Be productive or you have no worth. Suppress your emotions. They are inconvenient. Don't question authority. Fit in if you want to survive. Success means approval, not fulfillment. These messages are not consciously discussed. They seep into you through repetition and subtle pressure. Schopenhauer warned that humans are not driven by reason but by a blind will, a relentless force surging beneath awareness that will absorb these cultural demands like a sponge, then push you toward behaviors you don't fully understand. Why do you overwork yourself until you burn out? Why do you feel guilty for resting? Why do you fear disappointing others more than betraying yourself? Why do you care so deeply about external validation, even when you intellectually know it's meaningless? Because somewhere inside, the subconscious has accepted certain beliefs as laws that were never voted on, never questioned, never consciously approved. Sartre said that humans are condemned to be free, forced to make choices in a world with no predefined meaning. But your subconscious hates this. It craves pattern, order, safety, predictability. So it builds its own meaning, even if that meaning harms you. It repeats old fears because they are familiar. It recreates childhood dynamics because they feel stable. It keeps you small because smallness is predictable. This is the hidden root. Your subconscious confuses familiarity with safety, even when familiarity is the very thing destroying you. This is why people remain in toxic relationships. Why do they stay in dead-end jobs? Why do they fear happiness? Why do they unconsciously sabotage the very opportunities they claim to want? The subconscious clings to the known world, even if the known world is painful. Evolution wired it this way. The earliest humans survived not by seeking fulfillment, but by repeating what kept them alive yesterday. Anything new was dangerous. Novelty could be death. And so your subconscious inherited this ancient algorithm. Better the misery you know, then the uncertainty you don't. But you are no longer running from predators in the wilderness. You are running from shadows in your own mind, shadows shaped by past experiences, societal conditioning, and emotional imprints etched into your neural circuitry. This is why Viktor Frankl believed that humans must create meaning consciously. Otherwise, meaning is created for them, unconsciously, through fear and conditioning. When you fail to shape your inner world, the world that shaped you becomes your master. And yet, here is the most unsettling truth. The subconscious is not your enemy. It is your history. It is your memory. It is your protector acting on outdated instructions. It reacts quickly because it once needed to. It holds on to fear because fear once kept you alive. It resists change because change once meant danger. But those instructions were written by a younger version of you, one who didn't have your strength, your knowledge, your experience, or your perspective. The hidden problem is not that the subconscious controls you. The hidden problem is that you've never updated its script. And if you don't, the next chapter of your life will be nothing more than a repetition of the previous ones. The tension builds here because this realization leads to something even darker and more profound. If your subconscious has been writing your life without your permission, what consequences has that created? That is where we must go next. The hidden problem is unsettling enough, but the consequences, the ones you've lived through without realizing, are far more haunting. They seep into your days, shape your choices, and sculpt your identity silently, like wind carving stone. They accumulate slowly, subtly, until one day you wake up and wonder why your life feels foreign, why your dreams feel distant, and why the person in the mirror seems like someone you've been impersonating instead of someone you've become. The mind has a way of hiding the cost of unconscious living. It buries the contradictions under routine, disguises the tension as normal, and numbs the discomfort with distraction. But the consequences remain, operating in the background like a virus rewriting your operating system while you go about your day. Perhaps the first and most devastating consequence is this: you mistake your patterns for your personality. You think you're just the type who avoids confrontation, but really, your subconscious flinches at the memory of past conflicts. You think you just have bad luck with relationships, but your subconscious keeps pulling you toward the familiar wounds of your childhood. Do you think you're not creative, not confident, not disciplined? But those are simply conclusions drawn by a subconscious that learned long ago that creativity was judged, confidence was punished, and discipline was tied to fear rather than self-respect. Imagine how many of your traits are actually adaptations. How much of your identity is a survival strategy, replaying itself decades after the danger is gone. This is the tragedy of the subconscious. It continues fighting old battles long after the war has ended, and you pay the price every day. Another consequence: you become emotionally reactive without understanding why. A tone of voice triggers you. A certain silence makes you anxious. A piece of criticism feels like a personal attack. A delay makes you feel unimportant. A compliment makes you suspicious. A moment of stillness makes you restless. On the surface, these reactions seem irrational, but to your subconscious, they make perfect sense. Every reaction is a reference to something you forgot, a pattern of neurons firing in response to old memories, old scars, old lessons you've long since buried. Neurology tells us that emotional responses occur milliseconds before conscious interpretation. By the time you feel something, your subconscious has already made the decision. It has already cast the vote. It has already prepared your reaction. You are experiencing the echo, not the impact. This is why you sometimes feel like you're watching yourself from a distance, like you're observing your own behavior and thinking, why am I doing this? Why can't I stop? Why does this bother me so much? The answer is simple and devastating. You are responding to ghosts. Ghosts of past experiences. Ghosts of forgotten fears. Ghosts of messages that were whispered into your mind long before you had the ability to question them. Then comes the third consequence. You build a life that aligns with your subconscious wounds rather than your conscious desires. You choose partners who validate your fear of abandonment. You pursue careers that feed your fear of inadequacy. You accept treatment that matches your beliefs about self. You surround yourself with people who reinforce your limiting narratives, not because you want to, but because your subconscious seeks consistency. It loves patterns more than it loves happiness. If your subconscious believes you are unworthy, it will push you toward environments that confirm it. If it believes the world is unsafe, it will attract chaos or isolate you from opportunity. If it learned that love is conditional, it will sabotage relationships that feel too healthy, too calm, too real. This is not self-sabotage. This is self-preservation, just tragically misdirected. Then, slowly, without noticing, you settle, not consciously, not intentionally, but gradually, like a stone sinking in water. You settle for less excitement, less connection, less vulnerability, less hope, less freedom, less authenticity. And the saddest part is that you convince yourself this is just how life is. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of all is the quiet erosion of your inner voice. When the subconscious dominates your life, something begins to fade, something precious, something irreplaceable. Your capacity to imagine a different future. You stop dreaming freely. You stop envisioning boldly. You stop believing in possibilities that once felt natural. Your subconscious, obsessed with safety, narrows your world until the horizon shrinks, until creativity feels childish, until hope feels unrealistic, until ambition feels dangerous. You begin to mistake the feeling of safety for the feeling of purpose. You begin to mistake avoidance for boundaries. You begin to mistake numbness for peace. And beneath all this, another consequence grows like a slow poison. You live disconnected from yourself. You speak, but the words feel rehearsed. You laugh, but it feels like a performance. You make decisions, but they feel predetermined. You succeed, but it feels empty. You fail, but it feels inevitable. This is the quiet despair of unconscious living, not a dramatic breakdown, but a gradual dimming of the inner light. And here's what makes it even darker. Most people never realize this happened. They construct two entire lives around these invisible consequences. They build careers, marriages, identities on top of wounds they never examined. They pass down their subconscious fears to their children. They teach their own lessons of suppression, avoidance, and conform to repeating cycles, not because they want to, but because they never learned another way. This is how the subconscious survives across generations, silently, subtly, disguised as normal life. But you are here now, standing at the border between awareness and transformation. And once you see the consequences of unconscious living, you can never unsee them. There is a rebellion waiting inside you, one that begins the moment you stop accepting the life your subconscious built without your consent. And that rebellion is where we go next. There comes a moment, quiet, trembling, electrifying, when you finally understand that the life you've been living is not the life you've chosen. It is the life your subconscious constructed for you, brick by brick, belief by belief, fear by fear. And in that moment, something ancient awakens inside you, something that has been waiting beneath the rubble of your conditioning. A spark, a rebellion. This rebellion does not begin with dramatic declarations or sudden transformations. It begins with a subtle, dangerous shift, the willingness to question your inner world, the courage to doubt the thoughts that once felt absolute, the audacity to turn inward and say, maybe this isn't me, maybe I am more than this. Breaking free from the subconscious is not an act of violence, it is an act of reclamation. You are not fighting a monster. You are liberating a wounded intelligence that has been trying to protect you with outdated strategies. You are not destroying your subconscious. You are renegotiating your contract with it, and the rebellion begins with a startling truth. Awareness is the first act of revolution. Most people believe self-awareness is passive, something soft, gentle, reflective. But genuine awareness is a blade. It cuts through illusions, pierces denial, and shatters narratives. It forces you to confront the machinery of your mind with brutal honesty. It demands that you study your patterns as if they belong to someone else. Ask yourself, why do I react this way? Whose voice am I hearing when I criticize myself? Whose expectations am I trying to meet? Whose fears am I carrying that are not mine? Every question is a strike against the old regime. Every insight is a crack in the foundation of unconscious living. The second act of rebellion is even more radical. Do the opposite of what your subconscious expects. Your subconscious loves predictability. It survives through routine, repetition, and familiarity. So if you want to break its grip, you must disrupt the pattern. If it expects you to stay silent, speak. If it expects you to avoid risk, move toward it. If it expects you to shrink, expand. If it expects you to cling, release. If it expects you to run, stand your ground. This is the psychological equivalent of mutiny. It confuses the old programming. It destabilizes the emotional autopilot. It forces the subconscious to adapt, and in that adaptation, it becomes malleable. Again, this is why philosophers like Nietzsche spoke of the overcoming of the self, a continuous, deliberate act of becoming greater than your own conditioning, not by rejecting your past, but by refusing to remain its prisoner. The third act of rebellion is perhaps the most counterintuitive. Learn to listen to your subconscious without surrendering to it. Most people either ignore their subconscious or are ruled by it. Few walk the line between, but rebellion requires you to become a translator of your inner world. Instead of obeying your impulses blindly, you study them. Instead of suppressing your emotions, you decode them. Instead of chasing your desires without question, you interrogate their origins. Ask your fear, what are you trying to protect me from? Ask your anger, what boundary was crossed? Ask your sadness, what loss have I not acknowledged? Ask your patterns, what belief are you repeating? When you begin speaking to your subconscious this way, it stops acting like a tyrant and begins acting like an ally. You are no longer reacting, you are communicating. You are no longer collaborating. A rebellion does not succeed by force alone. It succeeds by strategy, by negotiation, by understanding the terrain of the battlefield. The fourth act of rebellion is the most difficult. Sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Your subconscious thrives in darkness. It grows stronger when you distract yourself. It manipulates you most easily when you avoid silence. So when discomfort arises, anxiety, loneliness, doubt, fear, you must resist the urge to drown it out with noise, entertainment, or routine. Sit with it. Feel it. Observe it. Not to suffer needlessly, but to reclaim the part of yourself you abandoned. Every moment of discomfort is a doorway. Every painful emotion holds a message. And every message you decode becomes a victory over the invisible forces that once ruled you. Viktor Frankl believed that meaning is born in suffering, not because suffering is noble, but because facing it reveals truths we never see otherwise. When you confront your discomfort instead of fleeing from it, you steal power from the subconscious patterns that fed on your avoidance. The fifth act of rebellion is transformative. Rewrite the narrative. This is where courage becomes creation. This is where awareness becomes authorship. This is where the past stops dictating the future. Your subconscious is fueled by stories about who you are, what you deserve, what is possible, what is forbidden. Most of these stories were written by people who had no idea they were shaping your identity. But now, as an adult, you have the power to rewrite them. Change, I am not enough to, I am evolving. Change, I always fail to, I am learning patterns. Change, I must be perfect to, I am allowed to be real. Change, I am alone to, I am connected in ways I am still discovering. Narrative restructuring is not wishful thinking, it is neurological liberation. The brain rewires itself based on repeated thoughts. New beliefs carve new pathways. New pathways create new behaviors. New behaviors create new realities. And then something extraordinary happens. You Subconscious, once the silent ruler, begins to adapt to the new narrative. It begins to serve the life you want instead of the life you inherited. It becomes a powerful ally rather than a hidden enemy. This is the essence of rebellion. Not the destruction of the old self, but the rebirth of the authentic one. And yet, there is one final step, one final realization that transforms rebellion into awakening. It is the truth that everything you have learned, unlearned, and reclaimed has been leading you toward a truth that does not just free you from your subconscious, but redefines what it means to be conscious at all. That truth is where we go next. There comes a point in every journey inward when the questions that once tormented you begin to dissolve, not because they've been answered, but because you've outgrown them. And in their place, a single revelation rises from the depths, quiet, undeniable, luminous. It arrives not as a thought, but as a recognition, as if the truth had been living inside you all along, waiting for the moment you were finally ready to see it. The realization is this: you are not merely the observer of your subconscious. You are its creator. It's the architect. Its author. Everything that once felt like destiny, instinct, or unchangeable programming was originally written by you, by a younger version of you, a frightened version of you, an inexperienced version of you. The patterns you feared were chains that were actually memories. The impulses you once fought were messages. The wounds you tried to outrun were blueprints and finished chapters in the story of who you are becoming. You were never fighting a separate force. You were fighting echoes of yourself. This is the ultimate paradox of the subconscious. It feels like an ancient, external intelligence ruling your life, yet it is entirely made of you. Your fears are your past selves trying to protect you. Your patterns are your past selves trying to guide you. Your wounds are your past selves asking to be acknowledged. Your instincts are your past selves whispering their lessons. And when you finally meet these parts of yourself, not with resistance but with understanding, something extraordinary happens. The subconscious stops being a shadow and becomes a source of immaculate power. Look back for a moment, not with regret, but with reverence. Every moment of fear sharpened your perception. Every heartbreak expanded your capacity to feel. Every mistake carved tunnels of self-awareness. Every disappointment forced you inward, deeper, closer to truth. The subconscious mind, for all its chaos and complexity, was never designed to imprison you. It was designed to preserve you long enough for you to awaken to your ability to reshape it. This is the deepest realization. Your subconscious is not the enemy of your freedom, it is the soil from which your freedom grows. Imagine a vast underground library, filled with every experience you've ever had, shelves of emotion, drawers of memory, corridors of instincts, every fear catalogued, every desire archived, every belief is stored. For most of your life, you wandered this library blind, bumping into books, misreading the volumes, mistaking dust for knowledge. But now, with awareness as your lantern, you see the truth. You are the librarian. You decide which stories stay. You decide which memories define you. You decide which patterns continue and which ones end here. This is what philosophers like Jung meant when they spoke of individuation. It is the moment you realize that you are not a fragmented collection of impulses. You are a unified consciousness capable of integrating every part of yourself. And integration is the real liberation, not suppression, not domination, not denial. Integration. Because once you integrate your subconscious, once you embrace the forgotten parts of yourself, you discover something you never expected. The subconscious is a gateway not downward into darkness, but upward into power. This is why so many ancient traditions spoke of enlightenment as a kind of remembering. The truth was never beyond you. It was beneath you, hidden under layers of conditioning, fear, inherited beliefs, and forgotten truths. You were never incomplete. You were never broken. You were never deficient. You were simply divided, living in one room of a mansion you didn't know you owned, and now the doors have opened. Here is the most powerful realization of all, the one that shifts the axis of your inner world. You are not a mind with a subconscious. You are a consciousness capable of shaping the mind. The conscious mind is not the ruler. The subconscious mind is not the ruler. You are the ruler, the awareness behind both. This awareness is not bound by memory, not bound by habit, not bound by inherited beliefs, not bound by stories written in moments of fear. It is vast, it is creative, it is boundless. It is the true youth, the part that has always known there is something more. When you access this awareness, you no longer live by pattern, you live by presence. You no longer act from fear, you act from intention. You no longer repeat old stories, you write new ones. Your subconscious becomes not a cage but a canvas, not a prison but a resource, not a legacy of trauma but a reservoir of untapped intelligence. With that realization, you understand something breathtaking. Freedom was never outside you. It was always on the inside, buried beneath the noise. This is the final turning point, the shift from survival to creation. The moment you stop being a passenger in your own mind and begin to pilot the vast inner world you once feared, You become the author of your story, the sculptor of your identity, the translator of your emotions, the healer of your past, the architect of your future, and your life begins to transform in ways that feel almost supernatural. Your reactions soften, your clarity sharpens, your doubts weaken, your desires strengthen, your patterns unravel, your intuition deepens. You stop living on autopilot, you stop fighting yourself, you stop betraying your needs. Instead, you move through the world with a groundedness that feels both ancient and new, a quiet power, a steady presence, a deep inner knowing that cannot be taught, only uncovered. And as this new awareness settles into your bones, one final recognition arises, soft, humble, and infinitely profound. You are not becoming yourself. You are remembering yourself. This is the ultimate truth, the truth the subconscious has been trying to deliver to you through every fear, every pattern, every emotion, every wound, every whisper in the dark. You were never lost. You were never powerless. You were never separate from your own potential. You were simply waiting to wake up. And now you have